Story 1. The Cursed Hospital Restroom. It was a quiet night at St. Mary's Hospital in the outskirts of London. Emily Carter, a young nurse from Manchester, was working the night shift, her least favorite time of the day. The hospital always felt eerie at night, with its dimly lit corridors and the occasional flickering light. After hours of sorting patient files, Emily felt the urge to use the restroom. Unfortunately, the nearest one on her floor was out of order. That left her with only one option, the old restroom in the basement, a place she had heard unsettling rumors about. "Don't use the basement restroom unless you have to," one of the senior nurses had once warned her. A patient committed suicide in there years ago. People say they still see her. Emily had laughed it off at the time. But now, standing alone in the hallway, she hesitated. Still, it was just a restroom, what could possibly happen? Taking a deep breath, she made her way down the cold, empty stairwell. The air grew heavier as she descended, a strange chill creeping up her spine. The restroom door creaked as she pushed it open. The smell of dampness and old disinfectant filled the air. A single flickering fluorescent light illuminated the room. There were 4 stalls. All were slightly open, except the last one, which was shut tight. Emily ignored it and entered the first stall. As she sat, she suddenly heard a noise. A door had moved. But which one? Her heart pounded as she peeked under the stalls. That's when she saw it, a pair of bare, pale feet standing inside the last stall. She held her breath. Maybe it's just another nurse, or a patient. But something felt wrong. The feet were motionless, almost unnaturally still. Emily hurriedly finished and stepped out, her hands shaking as she washed them. She glanced at the mirror above the sink. Her reflection looked normal, at first. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw something move. A figure was standing inside the last stall. A woman with long, dripping hair and hollow, black eyes. The lights flickered. The door of the last stall creaked open by itself. And then, darkness. A whisper brushed against her ear. "Don't look in the mirror." Emily fumbled for her phone, turning on the flashlight. The restroom was empty. No one was there. She exhaled shakily, convincing herself she was imagining things. But just as she turned to leave, she saw her reflection again. Her mirrored self was smiling. A wide, unnatural grin. Terror surged through her as she grabbed the door handle. It wouldn't budge. The air around her grew icy. Behind her, slow footsteps echoed. Something was approaching. She banged on the door, screaming for help. The footsteps stopped. A cold hand touched her shoulder. Suddenly, the door swung open, and Emily bolted out, racing up the stairs without looking back. When she reached the nurse's station, breathless and pale, one of the senior nurses frowned. "Emily, are you all right?" I got stuck in the basement restroom. There was something in there," she stammered. The nurse's expression turned grim. "The basement restroom?" Emily nodded, still trembling. "The last stall, it was closed. I saw someone." The nurse paled. "Emily, that restroom has been sealed for years. No one has been inside since the accident." A cold chill ran through Emily's body. Slowly, she glanced down at her arm. Her uniform was damp, as if someone had touched her. And in the distance, from the stairwell, a whisper echoed. "Don't look in the mirror." Story 2. The Cursed Apartment Bathroom. Jack Thompson had never believed in ghosts. A young British architect who had recently moved to New York for work, he was too practical for such superstitions. So, when he found a spacious yet oddly cheap apartment in an old brownstone building in Brooklyn, he didn't question his luck. The last tenant left in a hurry, the landlord had muttered, avoiding Jack's eyes as he handed over the keys. "Said something about the bathroom, but I wouldn't pay it any mind." Jack chuckled at the thought. People are so paranoid. The first few nights were peaceful. His new apartment was quiet, albeit a little colder than he liked. But then, the noises started. At exactly 3 a.m., Jack woke up to the sound of running water. Confused, he got out of bed and stumbled toward the bathroom. The sink faucet was on, water trickling down into the drain. Frowning, he turned it off. But as he stepped back, he saw it, a faint handprint forming on the fogged-up mirror. A chill ran down his spine. He wiped the glass with his hand, but there was nothing behind him. The room was empty. Convincing himself it was just his imagination, he went back to bed. But the next night, it happened again. This time, the shower was running. And this time, the mirror wasn't fogged. Yet the handprint was still there. Jack started researching the apartment's history. What he found made his stomach turn. Years ago, a woman named Margaret Wells had lived in the same apartment. She had been found dead inside the bathroom, drowned in the bathtub. The official report ruled it an accident, but rumors swirled that she had been whispering about something living in the mirror days before she died. Jack tried to brush it off, but the strange occurrences only grew worse. The bathroom door creaked open on its own. The light flickered whenever he looked into the mirror for too long. At night, he heard whispers coming from the drain, distorted and hollow. And then, on the 5th night, he saw her. It was past midnight when Jack walked into the bathroom, his skin prickling with unease. The mirror was pitch black, as if reflecting something that wasn't his apartment. Then, a face emerged. A woman with sunken eyes, wet, tangled hair, and a twisted, unnatural smile. She tilted her head, watching him with an eerie curiosity. Then, she moved. Jack stumbled back as the figure crawled forward, not in the mirror, but out of it. The bathroom light burst, plunging the room into darkness. A whisper slithered through the air. "Stay with me." Something cold wrapped around Jack's wrist. He screamed, yanking himself free, bolting out of the bathroom. But when he reached for the front door, he was back in the bathroom. No matter how many times he ran, he always found himself standing before the mirror again, staring at his reflection. Except, it wasn't him anymore. His reflection smiled, a wide, chilling grin that wasn't his own. And then, it stepped away, leaving the real Jack trapped in the glass. The next morning, the apartment was empty once again. And somewhere, deep within the mirror, Jack's silent screams echoed, waiting for the next tenant to arrive. Story 3. The Cursed School Restroom. Thomas Evans had always hated transferring schools, but moving to Blackwood Academy, an old boarding school in rural England, felt worse than usual. The stone buildings loomed under grey skies, and the hallways were always eerily quiet. "You're in Blackwood now," his roommate, Daniel, had told him on his first day. "Just, don't use the restroom on the 3rd floor. Not unless you want to disappear." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Disappear?" Daniel leaned in, lowering his voice. "A girl went missing there years ago. Some say she never left." Thomas rolled his eyes. "Ghost stories. Just something kids made up to scare each other." But a week later, he would wish he had listened. It was a rainy afternoon, and Thomas had stayed behind after class to finish his essay. By the time he was done, the hallways were deserted, and his stomach twisted uncomfortably as he realized something: he needed to use the bathroom. The nearest one? The 3rd floor restroom. Thomas hesitated but shook off his nerves. It was just a bathroom. What could go wrong? The air inside was ice cold. The fluorescent light flickered above him, barely illuminating the row of old, grimy stalls. A slow, rhythmic drip echoed from one of the sinks, though none were turned on. Ignoring the unease creeping up his spine, Thomas entered a stall and locked the door. But as soon as he sat down, he heard it. A faint, muffled whimpering, coming from the stall at the very end. He froze. "Someone else is here?" "Hey," he called out. "Are you okay?" No answer. Just the sound of water trickling, but it wasn't coming from the sink. It was coming from inside the stall. Thomas bent down to glance under the door. Nothing. The stall was empty. Yet, the whimpering grew louder. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he slowly stepped out of his stall. The air felt thick, suffocating. He turned toward the last stall, where the sound was coming from. His hands trembled as he reached for the door. The stall door slammed open on its own. The light above flickered violently, casting long, twisted shadows across the tiled walls. Thomas stumbled back, his breath coming in sharp gasps. And then, he saw it. In the mirror's reflection stood a girl in a tattered school uniform, her hair dripping wet, her eyes hollow and lifeless. Her head twitched to the side as she grinned, wide, too wide. "You came to find me." The whisper wasn't in his ears. It was inside his head. And before he could run, the lights died. Darkness swallowed the room, and Thomas felt ice-cold fingers brush against his arm. He screamed, pushing past the unseen force and running toward the door, only to find it locked. The whisper came again, closer. "Stay with me." His reflection was still grinning, but now, it was moving differently from him. It reached out, pressing its hands against the glass. Then, the reflection stepped forward. Not inside the mirror. Into the room. Thomas felt his body being dragged backward, an unseen force pulling him toward the last stall. He kicked and screamed, clawing at the floor, but it was useless. The last thing he saw before he was swallowed by the darkness was the girl's hollow eyes staring into his soul. The next morning, the restroom was silent again. The door was unlocked. The lights worked perfectly. But Thomas Evans was never seen again. And on the third-floor mirror, where his reflection should have been, a twisted, grinning face remained.